All right, so today we're going to go through the two-handed kettlebell swing, just the process that we go through at Align Fitness and teaching it from the first time the client touches the kettlebell. And then once we get through that process and they're swinging, then the goal of today is to be able to evaluate issues that we see in the swing and then put in appropriate corrective measures to fix those. There's also a chance we'll get to some Turkish get-up work as well. So we'll go one thing at a time here. In the room here today, we have Tina and Paul. Joe is on Zoom, but he might not be visible. And let's get going here. So for those of us that are in the room here in the studio, the first thing we're going to start off with actually is the process to just teaching someone how to swing a kettlebell for the first time. And then we'll actually go through like hip hinge mechanics, bracing, breathing, sequence, all that good stuff. So let's all grab a bell, like a moderately weighted kettlebell for now. So Joe, 35 makes sense for you. Tina, probably 35-ish makes sense for you. I don't really know what's appropriate for you.
Well, we're gonna find out. Do you have two 35s in here?
I don't. So I have a 30, and I think there's a 40 somewhere as well.
You want 35? I'll take the 30 because I just worked out.
That works for me. I can take the 40 as well.
Oh, which one do you want?
So here is our process. I'll give you the visual demonstration, but we can all do this together. So let's form a line right here. Okay, so if you look at the rubber on the floor, you can see this connection point right here. Let's go, let's go in the middle of that square right there, actually. All right, so here's the process just to kind of get someone oriented with how they swing kettlebell. We don't truly start here necessarily because you want to make sure they have good hip hinge mechanics, they know how to breathe, they know how to brace, and they're also a pretty good deadlifter already. So all those things are prerequisites before we get to this point. So the process to swing the kettlebell for the first time should look something like this. I'm going to actually take my toes to the kettlebell, and I'm going to take a step away from that bell, or maybe 3/4 of a step, is a more accurate way of looking at this, and then open up my feet to around shoulder width. I'm going to, quote, karate chop my hips back, is what we always said, to get into a good hinge. And I grip my bell. Now you notice I got to reach for my bell a little bit. So that's intentional. So I got that little forward reach going. And the first thing we're going to do after we grip is just do a little posterior weight shift. So I'm going to tilt my bell and take my weight towards my heels without my foot coming up. And I'm rocking forward. So let's just go 5 rocks just like that if you don't mind. So Joe, same thing on your end. So you walk toes to bell, take about 3/4 of a step away, get the shoulder width feet, hinge the hips back, grip the belt, and all we're going to do here is 5 of these rocks. So you're going to shift back towards your heels, but don't let your toes come up, and make sure the whole way you've got nice neutral spine. So the two of you do, Tina, I would just say a little bit more knee bend would make a lot of sense for you. All right, and then once you hit your fifth, you can kind of come on back and relax for a sec. So now, the intention of that is we're loading that posterior chain there. So the idea there is unless someone's like hypermobile, they should feel a little bit of tension in their hamstrings at the back end. So once they have that concept down, there's really nowhere else to go but just single swings. So this literally means we're going to do one swing and put the kettlebell right back down. So I follow that same process, and that's a process with the setup that we're going to follow forever, where toes to bell, step away, hinge, grip, and I load my posterior chain here before I actually hike my bell back. So my single swings just look like this. I'm going to hike it back, one swing, and I put that bell right back on the floor, right there already in that like diagonal position, and my hands are loaded again. So how about everybody here goes 3 single swings, or as we call them, dead stop swings. We'll put it back down, regroup, make sure the posterior chain is loaded again, and then do the next. All good. One more. All right, and bell's down. So that's a really logical place to start, and sometimes with newer clients, that's as crazy as I get on that particular day. So I talk about the process to grip, to load the posterior chain, to hike, and to do single swing. So that might be as far as we go, and that's okay, especially if you have other goals in that session or session. So don't spend your whole day just working on a kettlebell swing, because it could take a full hour if someone's like not terribly well coordinated. So always look at all this stuff like you're going to teach all this stuff in chunks. All right, so now from here, we're going to go to multiples, obviously. So for the short term, we're just going to do sets of 5. So we're going to go toes to bell yet again. We're going to step away, keep following the same process. And now again, we're going to go 5 consecutive swings. We'll start now to cue breathing. So what you want to tell them is as you're loading that posterior chain, I encourage them to inhale about 50% of the way, if that makes sense. So I'm starting to fill my lungs, but I'm not at my full capacity yet. The inhales on the down are through your nose and they're kind of aggressive, like you're going to hear me. It's almost a little bit annoying. The exhale isn't like a, it's a, so it really stems from martial arts. So what that does is it helps to maintain high levels of intra-abdominal pressure. So in martial arts, when they strike, that always coincides with the hit. So the quote hit of this essentially is the top of that kettlebell swing. We're stopping and decelerating the bell. So again, just try to get tuned into my breathing. I'm just going to do a set of 5 here. Same setup, grip, load posterior chain, halfway with my inhale now, and then I finish as I hang. Bell goes down the same now. So let's go 5 consecutive, please. Good, sharp exhales. I want to hear. All right, well, good. All right, just take a couple seconds, shake it out. Let's go one more set of 5. Let's say 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Height. Well, good. All right, so typically the way I do this in a really big setting is as I see like the beginnings of this in your swings, I'm looking for swing faults. So I call one on you, sir. So let's get the camera directed on you, if that's okay. Why don't we set you up like right here in this space so it's really obvious for the camera. Why don't you go, let's set 8 swings so there's plenty of time for someone to recognize what's going on with you here, okay? And I'll let Joe and Tina see if they can figure out what's going on. What's the flaw in his swing? And you can shut that down. So do either of you see anything? There's really 2 big ones.
Well, I don't see as much of a hip hinge. I see more he's using upper body and kind of coming up when he comes to the top of his swing.
Okay. Yep. And Joe, do you see anything there? Anything that was obvious to you?
Just not that explosive with the hips coming forward, but
Right.
I don't think that's what you're talking about.
That's fair. So we actually identified 3 different things then, really, because I identified something else. So there's a lot of squat in your swing right now. Okay. What you identified, and is the other thing that I saw, they're similar but a little different. I saw roundedness of his middle spine and upper spine a lot of the times at the bottom of the swing. So maybe that's kind of what you saw too. So maybe he was also
He's
pulling
compensating
with
when
the
he
arm.
comes up,
Okay.
right?
So there's all that stuff. So this actually opens up the door for the perfect thing. I think we just start working on hip hinges right now, because if you don't have a really good hip hinge, you're never going to have a really good kettlebell swing. Now, Joe, for you, if you don't have like a dowel or a broom or a stick you can put behind your back, that's okay. You can go to what's called prisoner's pose. So there's 2 different options for hinging. The dowel on your back is optimal. Plan B is just this prisoner's pose thing where you just interlace your fingers and put them behind your head. So if you're watching this in the future and you don't have a dowel with you, oh, that's okay. You're going to go to prisoner's pose and hands behind the head. If you have a dowel, what we're going to do is we're going to grab that dowel and we're going to set it up so it's touching the head, the upper back, and the tailbone. And the intent is that it stays in those 3 positions. So again, head, upper back, and tailbone. So that's all yours. So if you 2 don't mind, like, let's just get in a spot where you can at least be seen by the camera there. All right, so there's an order of operations when we hinge, and then we'll work on spine position second. So take your feet up to shoulder width-ish again, hip to shoulder, somewhere in there. So step 1 literally is just soften your knees, just unlock it. Now from here, think about intentionally pushing your hips back. So you want to get someone out of the way with your butt, and it's okay to close the gap between the chest and the ground. Cool. Come right back on up. Now on the next one, Tina, you didn't do it. Paul, you kind of did do it because you want to squat anyway, so it makes sense.
Oh, I'm not.
When you feel like you're running out of room at the bottom, allow additional knee bend. So let's start at the top here together. Joe, same for you. We unlock the knees first. Now hinge the butt back. Don't do much with the knees. When you feel like you're out of room, allow a little knee bend. Get a little compression is what we call it. Now come right back up by driving the hips forward. Same thing. Unlock the knees. Drive the butt way back. Secondary to that, bend your knees and then come back up. So Tina and Paul, you two are doing it a little prematurely. So you're giving me the knee bend, but think like really deep hinge first, knee bend second. Yep. Yeah, you got it now, Tina. So do you, Paul. So let's go through a couple more repetitions of this. So I would put this in place for Paul because I didn't like what I was seeing in his hinge when he had that roundedness through his upper back. So this would be one of the many drills we can put in place. Now, Paul, you're starting to prematurely bend those knees again and squat, which is your other movement fault, which we'll work on later. You got it. How about 3 more reps? Again, if you're following along in the future here, just you be repping this out with us. The entire way. Every rep we do, you do. I should have said that at the beginning. All right, and everybody is done. All right, so now, Paul, with the focus on the middle spine staying neutral, right? Let's swing that bell again if you want. So let's do that stick, if that's okay. And let's see what you look like here, man. So same stuff, camera position is all good. Joe, keep an eye on him. Tina, same thing. Right now we're looking at his middle spine. All right, so it's interesting. So for Paul, Paul actually has a really clean, well, you squat a little bit in your hips, but you do a really good job of keeping your spine nice and neutral. It's once we introduce that external load that you start to lose this. So we'll actually come back to that and fixing that. I think for you, you need to work on more of your bracing actually than just your hip hinge. So it's okay that we went down this road initially of like, all right, let's try to work on these hip hinge mechanics. But what we found there was like, meaningful because when we did that, your hip hinge was really, really good. Again, minus the squattiness, no offense, but the spine position was perfect. So we know that you have the capacity to have a really good hip hinge, just under load things change. Gotcha. So go ahead.
Would you decrease the load then, or
Not
no?
the
You
kettlebell
fix it
swing.
first.
Yes, kettlebell swing is one of the really rare circumstances where like by decreasing the weight to a, like 50% or a third of the load, it really isn't a benefit.
Okay.
That this is one of the few exercises where then you're more likely to compensate and cheat, unlike traditional strength work. That's when you're starting to see people pull with their shoulders or lead with the arm as opposed to kind of like be driven by the hips. Right. Joe, you have any questions on that so far? Is everything I'm saying making sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we talked about, again, I'll just stay in the family of working on hip hinge mechanics with somebody. So we talked about dowel on the back. Joe, I gave you the default there of going prisoner's pose. So there's another option for you here. If someone's just really not doing a good job of that posterior weight shift, which we'll find really often, sometimes all they need is a target. So you can keep the dowel, or you can just go to interlace fingers. And here's what we do. We put someone in front of a wall, and the wall is their target. So they have some sort of tactile feedback to know, oh yeah, that's my spot. So I'm just gonna go to prisoner's pose here, and I'm gonna follow the same sequence or order of operations. I unlock my knees. I stick my butt back, and it's a little too far for me, so I'm going to scoot back a little bit. So right about there, I think that'll work out for me. So now I'm going to do 3 in a row, and I just have this target. Unlock, hinge, and I'm going to compress a little bit still. Right back up. Unlock, hinge, compress. And I could probably come up like a little bit. So you really want to find that sweet spot where you can get there, but it certainly is a challenge. Last thing to note, probably hard to see on Zoom right now, but I am absolutely keeping my toes connected. So if we're doing this, it is a complete and utter waste of your time. So you go a little bit of that. So Paul, if you don't mind, why don't you go here? Tina, you can go here. Joe, go wherever you want. Let's just work through 5 repetitions on that. Again, looking for just adding tactile feedback on the hinge. So figure out your distance from the wall and still follow your order of operations. Paul, you're doing a lot better with the sequence. You're not doing the premature knee bending. Yeah, and Tina, like you're adding knee bends. So yeah, you two are very much opposites in that. And like that's stuff that you'll see. So like Paul is dying to knee bend early. Tina's uninterested in a knee
I just love it.
bend. That's fair. All right, I think everyone's good. So look, in a normal scenario, you don't introduce 8 drills and then swing again. You introduce a drill and see, did it have the carryover that we want to have? So Paul, this isn't going to have the carryover we want because I think you need more tension. But either way now, let's utilizing what you just felt, that like endpoint in your range of motion and the depth of your swings. Let's go through 10 consecutive swings right now. So Paul, Tina, everybody, let's jump right back on it. I want to swing some bells, so I'm going to jump in it too. So let's all set up in the same manner. Again, this repetition is good. Toes to bell, step back, hip to shoulder width, karate chop your hips back. Grip, tilt, load the posterior chain, 10 swings. Great job, everybody. All right, now,
I had one more.
an extra. There's a common scenario where someone has good hip hinge mechanics in a normal scenario, right? Then you add the bell and they don't get that depth in it. So there's a way to incorporate what we did with this drill here with the kettlebell swing. Do you have, no, let me grab something. So Joe, you're not going to really have anything to do here. You have to use your imagination. What I'm going to have you two do working together now is you want to encourage additional depth in the kettlebell swing. Here's how we're going to do it. Paul, come on, why don't you set up? We're going to give Paul a target, just like we did in the hinge. So we're pretending right now like Paul doesn't have great depth at the bottom of his swings. That's why we're incorporating yet another hip hinge drill. So usually this is with a clipboard, we call these like clipboard taps. You can have a notebook, a foam roller, whatever. You just need something that's not going to break or disrupt his swing. So if you want to sit up like normal, I'm going to give you the target string in the second swing.
What am I targeting?
You'll know. Second on back. All right, so you want to get to the foam roller. There we go. So get your breathing right. Inhale down, exhale up. There it is. Good. So I'm just going to maybe bring it back a hair more. Honestly, this is not a bad thing for Paul. Now, Paul's depth is kind of funky because he's still in a little bit of a squat pattern. But bottom line here is if someone isn't in the squat pattern, they have a good hinge, this is giving them a target. Again, because what we really want to search for is what we did in the very beginning, where you got that little like tug on the posterior chain in the initial setup before you even hiked your bell back, if you remember. So like, that's what we're trying to find at the bottom of every single swing. That little tug that you feel when you're here is the same thing I like people to feel at the bottom of every one of their swings. To me, that's usually a good indicator that like they're in a good spot with their range of motion. So let's again apply the skill now. So let's go 10 swings. So on that note, if you can, I want you to try to feel a little bit of tension. Now, Tina, you're flexible enough where you might not ever feel that.
I know.
Joe, maybe you too. Paul, you and I think we'll feel that more commonly. So let's go 10 swings again. Still follow the same process in order of operations before you hike. All right. So again, all these things are about options. Okay.
Yeah, dude.
A little back. Okay. Did you feel that prior?
It swings always get my lower back to hurt.
Okay, and that's probably because of your hip hinge mechanics. So we'll have to see if you continue to do all the swings today. So Paul's just feeling a little bit of low, like pain in his low back. Today, I'm jumping into this like I would with the kettlebell seminar, but if you were a traditional client, I would do some FMS testing with you.
Well,
And maybe I would have found that swings aren't the right thing for you.
Greg knows this about me as well. Down here is my weakest area because that's where I broke my back. I broke my L3.
Okay, got it. So for you, it might not just be about motor control. That's the thing, you've actually broken back. Okay, so honestly, had I known that in the beginning and you were my client, it's not real likely I would ever have you do kettlebell swings, to be totally honest with you, unless you like met a lot of criteria for proceeding. So I'm gonna leave it up to you whether or not you can continue.
Yeah,
to swing or
I'm
not.
gonna continue until I can't. I know where that limit is. It's not
Okay,
there yet.
as long as you're like aware of that. Okay. So again, not normally what we would do in a traditional session with the client for the record, okay, for the purposes of learning today or what you expect. All right, so I've got one more option for you with depth in this. Now, it's a funky drill, and I appreciate how funky the drill is. Might be uncomfortable to do with people, but it can be helpful. So just because we're two dudes, Paul, I'm gonna have you be the one that I do this to, not to you, Tia. It's weird enough between two guys, and even weirder with a woman and a guy. So this is gonna be a deal where we physically pull, a manual pull into like the bottom position. So we're still talking about that person who has maybe good hip hinge mechanics without the bell, but with the bell not so much. So why don't you face that mirror? And Paul, this is your kettlebell. Okay. So why don't you go ahead and grip that band for me? So I know this is a black band and a black fork, so this might not be the perfect thing, but bottom line is I just have this band in hand. Optimally, this would be like a rope or a chain or something that's a little bit more stable. So Paul, why don't we get you to the top for a second? So now it's gonna be really important with the person who's holding, right? The angle at which you take really matters. If we go up too high, that's not gonna be real comfortable for Paul. So Paul, slow control, get to the bottom of your hinge, and I'm pulling it and pulling it and pulling it into that bottom. Now, don't lose your middle spine, pull back your chest, pull back your shoulders. So there he is, and I'm literally like forcing him to load this, dig the toes into the ground, slow control to come up out of the bottom. There we go. So this is something maybe we do for like 3 to 5 reps. It's the same concept. We would do this, and then we would jump right back into our swings again. And the whole way, you're using your coach's eye. We only put this in because you didn't like the depth at the bottom of the kettlebell swings. So now we're trying to like yet another drill. Is this the winner for Paul? Is this the one that's going to make Paul's system kind of like figure it out? Then when he goes back to his swings again, he's clean, he's good. So the bottom line is like all these hip hinge drills, the goal isn't that you have 80 things to do with someone for their hip hinge. The goal is that you have different options to figure out what the corrective is for them that they need that works with the way they move or the way they work. That's the bottom line. So for the sake of consistency, 10 swings, man. Let's all pretend like we just did that. Paul, it's up to you if you want to go down and bell or modify however you want. Okay?
That one, I definitely felt more correct in that bit.
Okay. And that's kind of nice too, because you had to like use your core a little bit to not get pulled into position. So that's why I'm thinking you're going to be more of a stability guy in terms of fixing that mid spine position. All right, so 10 swings. Catch breath. You want to grab some water? Go ahead real quick.
I can't get that. Well, it's hard, but I know exactly now. I never really understood to feel that in there, but now I understand it.
Okay.
It is a hard depth.
No doubt. No.
Yeah.
All right, catch breath. Water too. All right, so from here, we're going to make a transition. So all those corrective exercises all fell under the category of we're trying to either fix the hinge without the bell in hand or fix the hinge with the bell in hand. One or the other. I would always start with making sure someone has good hip hinge mechanics without the bell. So if they don't have it there, they're never going to have it with the bell. Once we have that established, then you start to work on their depth with the bell. So the early exercises like hinging in prisoners or with the dowel, doing the same thing up against the wall, all those really are with the intent of improving the hip hinge mechanics with nothing in hand. The stuff where I had like Paul tap the foam roller or I'm physically pulling Paul into the bottom of that position, to me, that's more specific like with the bell. So that's almost more like skill work than it really is mechanics in a lot of ways because it's specific to what you do with the kettlebell. All right, now that's all well and good. So now let's assume you got to this place where your person now has really good hip hinge mechanics. They look clean in their swing. But now we got to transition to the next really important piece of the puzzle, which is tension. So the kettlebell swing is very much a yin and a yang. There's looseness, and then there's super aggressive short-lived tightness. Loose, tight, loose, tight. So if you really think about the swing in a lot of ways, there's way more time with looseness than there is time with tightness. So the point where we're the tightest every time is right there. And it coincides with that exhale, and that's why we're exhaling. But for the most part, as we're coming down, I mean, really, the bell is doing most of the work for us. So if we're real tight here, we're fighting the bell, we're physically never going to get into the bottom position. So while we are going to drive hard with our hips here and then turn everything on there, the down really is a skill, and it's all about the sequence. The bottom line is right now, let's evaluate whether or not people are doing their swing for tight. It's a really simple thing that I do with people, and you always have to seek permission out. We're going to karate chop, quote unquote, in 3 different areas. So I want to karate chop quads, glutes, and abs. So the way we're going to do this is when that split second, when that person has that moment of like stillness at the top of the swing, that's when you come in and you quote karate chop those different areas of the body to see, well, is that spot tight? Is that spot tight? Is that spot tight? So why don't you two do this together if you could? Joe, I would karate chop you if I could, man. I'm sorry I'm not there for that. So Tina, why don't you swing? Do we have permission for Paul to karate chop you?
Karate chop.
Okay, and of course, relatively gentle karate chops, and of course, never an open hand, Paul. All right.
With the chops, do you do all 3 or choose one?
Now I go one, and then the next, and then the other, and then on the fly right away, feel free to give your feedback about if it's not tight or if it is tight. So,
Do you want me to do that? Or?
no, dude, just do your normal thing.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. So how about you guys 10 swings, and you kind of go around the horn, quads, glutes, abs. Now, obviously, the best position for you is on the side because the kettlebell's flying this way, and even back here can clip you in like the knee or the shin. So lateral position, don't be afraid to get closest to her. Let's do it. Yeah, don't be afraid to give her some feedback.
You're tightening up. Everything is firm. Everything is very
Done.
yeah.
Well, that was inappropriate to say firm. No, I'm just kidding.
Everything is very
Yeah.
tight.
Okay. So like bottom line there is like what you're often going to find is like for most people, I'd say like 80% of people, one of the 3 is not going to be
Right.
and each thing has different potential repercussions. So if we don't do a really good job of firing our glutes and driving our hips forward in our kettlebell swing, likely there's going to be some level of compensation, and that's a really likely culprit to have someone's low back become bothersome. So if I'm just kind of getting here like loosey-goosey, and this isn't tight and stabilizing my pelvis and part of like my SI and my lower lumbar, that's going to end up moving in funky ways. So my back's going to hurt, my lower back's going to hurt. If I don't do a good job of bracing my abdominals, that's when we tend to lose middle spine stuff. And then just in general, if you're not firing your quads, well, that means your knees aren't in that locked position or semi-locked at the top. And then you just can't really get tall and neutral. So that'll oftentimes represent like a forward head, forward posture, poor pelvic position. Maybe they don't finish with their hips. So that's why all 3 elements there are equally important. So why don't we flip it if that's okay? Now, so Paul swings. Tina, you chop.
Are you okay with me?
Yeah.
Chopping.
Joe, how you doing over there? You all right?
Great, man.
Sorry, this can't be as interactive for you.
Oh, I did. All right, your glutes. There we go. But I really want to keep hitting them because.
Oh, again, the timing of that goes to get the top.
Well, that's what, right, and I'm
Yeah.
trying to figure that out because at first I was like, wait, that's soft. So then, oh, okay,
Yeah,
now
you
we're
can
engaged.
chop a little bit
Yeah.
harder than that as well.
And real quick, why don't we have you swing for just 5 more? And I'm going to do it only because I've done this a million times over and over again. So I don't get real far away from Paul. I get like slightly uncomfortably close to Paul. But that way, like it's really easy for me to like go where I want to go. So go ahead, Paul. Hi. So like bang, yup. Got it.
Oh, so you're used to.
Got it. So like I'll,
Yeah.
sometimes I go close fist, and as long as it's not inappropriate, I might even go like with the finger. So right there, unfortunately, nothing was on, but I think you were still a little bit out of breath from that previous set. So, but that's a really like telltale way of identifying it. But other stuff that you just might see that to you should indicate, nah, they're not really all that tight in the right place. So one, they never finish. They never get to tall and tight. Well, I mean, if I don't finish with my hips, right? If I'm here and I try to turn my glutes on, I can get them on, but I can't get the same level of squeeze as I can when I'm tall and I'm neutral. Same exact thing goes for my quads. Like, can I fire my quads here? Yeah, but there's certainly some softness right here. Once I get taller and get closer to a locked at knee, my quads are as tight as they're gonna get. And then the mid-spine thing for Paul and the abdominals, I'm pretty sure there's gonna be a relationship there for Paul. So if I'm really tightening my abdominals, I'm a little less likely to get into that rounded position. Now, it's also a lat thing too, to be super clear. So it's abdominals and lats, both things like that. So you're looking for those things. If you see that, you're like, all right, that's not right. It's probably a tightness issue. And now where am I gonna go from a corrective perspective? Well, let's go there right now. So the first place that's a good catch-all is a real simple one. It's the high tension plank. You've done the high tension plank with me, Joe. You're probably aware of it on some level. Paul, I don't know if you are. So it's an elbow down front plank, right? But we are gonna close the gap between our elbows and our toes. Now, to be clear, we don't physically go anywhere, but it's like I want to shorten that length. And all that really does is primarily turn on the anterior chain, but the whole way I want your glutes on and your lats on. So let's do this together. These are short lifts. So Joe, you might as well hit the deck here as well, man. We're gonna go 15 seconds on the elbows down, high tension plank. So how about everyone just get to their elbows and their knees? On three, we'll walk it out. Let's say 1, 2, 3, and go. So think, shorten the lever between the elbows and the toes. Abdominals should be on tight. Force your glutes into play. You got no glutes. There you are, man. And now here too. So turn those lats up. We're gonna go for 3 more seconds. So 3, 2, 1. Come on, now recover. We're gonna do it one more time. We're gonna go on 3. 1, 2, 3, and go. One more, 15 seconds. And we would have glutes this time around, everybody. Yes and yes. Yup. And for you, you can also think about a little bit of hollow might help you. And lat. And give me a little bit of lat. 3, 2, 1. Go. All right, so that really was specific for Paul. So for a second, let's watch Paul. Does this have any positive impact on his middle spine position at all? Well, how about 5 to 8 swings as long as your back's holding up? Okay, you good? Yes. All right, let's do it, man. Actually, let me just change the camera angle. All right, so right now we're just focused on this. So Paul, like there. Can you maintain that, man? We'll see. Tight at the top, bro. Yeah, we're better. It's not perfect, but we are better. And done. So I'm not trying to say at all Paul went from a F to an A. All right, that's not what I'm getting at. But Paul went from a D to a B minus at least, just with that one drill. And again, that's what you're looking for with these people. So like, you know, you're spotting flaws. You don't want to spend the whole damn session trying to figure it out, especially if you're in a semi-private setting. So then like what you can do as part of the circuit for Paul would be, maybe we work on hip hinge for you, right? Because hip hinge isn't like all that like deep consistently, high tension plank and swings. And that sounds so simple. When you put that shit on a loop and your only recovery is your hip hinge, it's actually pretty hard. So that's something we'll do a lot of in the seminars where we go almost like a Tabata style format, 20 seconds of hinging, 10 seconds off, 20 seconds of high tension plank, 10 seconds off, 20 seconds of swings. You put it on a loop for 4 or 5 rounds. So again, it's not that hard where you're like super taxed, but you're doing 2 skill building exercises in the circuit with the swing, and then they immediately try to transfer like those skills that they're building right to that kettlebell swing right away. So it doesn't sound hard, but that actually for an average client could be pretty challenging. All right, so we've given you one option here, right? Now let's say Paul's the guy though who's hanging out back here, right? So he swings, and this is as far as Paul goes. He doesn't get to there. So actually a good example of that for you, Joe, this doesn't mean much to anybody else. Frank Vinci is a client of ours. And when Frank swings or deadlifts, he doesn't always get all the way there and tall and into lockout. So let's pretend like Paul's in that boat. So Paul, I have you lay me back real quick. Joe, I don't know what to tell you to do on your own. And hey, note, for people doing this in the future, you're gonna need a partner is what I'm realizing as we go. All right, so why don't we set up for a bridge? So now this will be a high tension bridge. You're gonna set both feet down like you just did for a normal bridge. Turn on your abs, pinch your butt, and give me a regular bridge first. Beautiful, come back down. Okay, so there we're encouraging like the lockout position and hip extension. But why not add more variables and get Paul even tighter? So Paul, if you don't mind, go here, just without closing the fist. That's like the top of the kettlebell swing position, agreed? Drop your shoulders down and back. Meet my pressure, Paul. In fact, drive the knee a little harder. Okay, let's go 5 bridges. So abs on, because they have to be right now. Squeeze your butt, drive your hips up, then exhale. Good, inhale down. Push it into the floor, don't lose me. Yep, good. Push me. Good, a couple more, push me. Good, one more, push me hard, hard. And go. All right, I want to give you a chance to do that too, but I'm curious. Let's swing some bells again, man. So let's see if we're going to go above that B- that we just saw with the mid-spine position. And Tina, I want to give you the same opportunity to do that. Joe, sorry, bro. I'll put the chest behind the shoulders. And done. Nah, so that wasn't the drill for Paul. I won't say that he got any better there. You got no worse for the record, but that wasn't like the winner. Why don't you two flip? So why don't you go on your back there, Tina, real quick. Paul, why don't you give it the pressure I did? Let's just do that high tension bridge together. Good, and seek the breath. Awesome. Tina, I know that you looked pretty good already, but let's swing. So if you're at home watching this, swing. After you watch her. Yep. 2, good. 3, 4, and done. Great job. Good job. All looks good. So, I mean, there's more that we could do, but those are really the primary correctives for tension.
That's
So,
huge. You can really, that's amazing.
that was jump pretty
That
good.
is amazing. Like you really can't tell. Like I could watch on him how well he could do it there versus standing up.
Yep.
How it
Cool.
changes.
So look, let's do that little skill building circuit I talked about like a minute ago. Okay, so there's 3 of us. We'll create 3 stations. Joe, for someone doing this individually, you just need a station for hinging. You need a station for high tension planking, and then you need a station for kettlebell swing. So that's all we need. So I'm going to try my best to actively participate in this because, again, I'm trying to get some movement in today, but also be the one who lets us know when we're done. Okay. So I'm going to just quickly get our timer and all that good stuff set up.
It doesn't matter. You're back on.
Actually, yeah, that's the one I want to better at these.
So yeah, let's do this. Let's get our bells over here. So how about all 3 of our bells? Let's just kind of pop them here. If that's okay. And like right in order, like 1, 2, 3. If that's okay. I'm sorry, I didn't order that well. All right. Then how about our first station over here? Let's make this our hinge station right there. Bless you. And then the middle station right here, we're just throwing that down just for the sake of like having a clearly defined area.
There's one right here.
Right here. So here's what we'll do in this room. Like we'll all circle, like we're doing like a regular personal training session where there's 3 stations and we move around.
Yep.
So station 1 is our hip hinge. And Tina, if you like, come like a little tighter towards me just so they can kind of sort of see you in the camera there at least. Yep. I'll be in a high tension plank to start, and you're starting off in the swing, which isn't really optimal, but that's okay. So how about this? The person who's doing the hinge is in charge of the clock because they're under the least stress.
And what, where's 20 seconds?
So we're gonna go 20 on, 10 off. So why don't we wait to the 30 mark on there? So at home, I would say you'd go hinge first, plank second, and then finally swing third. So Tina, why don't you give us a countdown there?
4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go.
Just 20 seconds of work.
And down. 4,
Should
3, 2, 1.
All right, rotate. So pull, you're on a hip hinge. And pull, you're in charge of the clock now. So we're gonna go in like 2 seconds. So pull, say go.
There you go.
So pull when it hits 8:20, we're done.
Five, 2, 1.
Done. Rotate, pull, still your stick. Don't feel like you need to swing it all anymore, make it show. All right, on 3, 1, 2, 3, and go. Five seconds to go. 3, 2, 1, and done. Pull it. Tina, you're on the clock. 0 to go. We'll go 2 rounds. We're already entering the beginning of round 2 now. You can just change.
All right, ready? Let's go.
Why don't you turn sideways and watch the mirror so you can see like the sequence of events better. There you go. And like look to the side of the mirror. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about.
All right, I'll show you.
All right, we're done.
So Paul, so you turn like this,
Oh,
then
I
you can see your joints in what order which they move. So pull kind of down, 2 seconds.
2, 1, and go.
Ten down. 50, we're done, Paul.
Yep. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Done. All right, last station. 5 seconds.
Ooh, it is
See? 2,
a legit.
1, and go. Five seconds. 3, 2, 1, and done. All right, catch your breath, everybody.
No, it's not a joke.
See, like way harder than you think of it. So that's something like early days with the client, they're learning swings. That's a great like sequence of events to put together for somebody again, because it's like skill builder, application of those skills. Skill builder, application. So you can do that for 2, 3, 4 rounds easy.
So my question on that though is, how do you figure out their load when they're first starting out? So you're just starting this,
Yep.
and you know that they're not there, but
Yep.
you want to get them there.
So
How are you?
in general, I don't really go much below like a 25 pound cutoff for anybody.
Okay.
Unless there's like some great reason for it.
Right.
And you know, if you look at like traditional Russian kettlebell manuals,
Yeah.
they do look at gender and associate that with weight loads. Not saying that's right or wrong.
Right.
The model that they typically use is you try to get a woman around 35 and a man around 55. They tend to be aggressive.
Right.
So for me, I typically will start a female around 25 and start a male around 45. And then just based on what I'm seeing, like go up or down. So like if they're throwing that thing around and they have a hard time stopping here because they hinge so hard and fast, they have a hard time not letting the belt fly up, I might go up a little bit in the weight load. If they're having a hard time, they can't get it past their belly button. Belly button's technically acceptable. It's really technically anywhere between your nipple line and your belly button for like where the target for the bell is. But if they can't get past that belly button, I might come down a little bit then so they can get more to like nipple-ish height consistency. That would be the general starting point and how I would decide higher or lower based on what I'm seeing.
Okay. Hope that wasn't it.
No, absolutely. All right, so from here now, let's figure something else out. There is breathing, obviously, which we put that right away. There's hinging and there's bracing. There's still 2 more areas that we get to address. The next one's the hardest one to teach and the hardest one to fix. It's the sequence on the downswing. And so there's 2 ways of doing this, and there's a right way and a wrong way. But a lot of people, honestly, are kind of like somewhere in the middle. This puts a really high level of risk on the low back if done the wrong way. So to get to the top of the kettlebell swing, you don't really have much of a choice, right? You have to do it right, unless the weight's so light you can muscle it with your upper body. But then you're swinging too light like that. So on the up, we essentially have to sequence hips, arms, and belly. On the down, what you'll see commonly, which is an error and wrong, is hinge when the bell's still up here. So right now, right, you can see there too. Like if I'm holding a 5-pound weight here, that might actually bother my back a little bit. If I'm up here and I'm tight, fine. If I'm here, I'm fine. So the bottom line is what we don't want is this huge sweeping arc. And when I say arc, I mean past the kettlebell, where the kettlebell is almost scraping the floor at the bottom. What we really want is, again, it's a funny cue my partner always gave in these seminars, but it always stuck with everybody. Like chicken with your manhood is what he always says to the middle school boys that he trains to kettlebells. So you want to close this gap between the arms and your hips as much as you can before you hinge. And that seems like a scary thing. And in a lot of ways it is, because we're designed to avoid pain. So in our brain, we're going to get hurt there. So you almost have to fight your instincts a little bit in delaying the hinge of the hips. You'll always get out of the way. I've never seen a scenario where someone hinges their hips too late ever in my life. But I always see it where they go too early. So what I'm going to show you here, and hopefully I do a decent job, is this thing where we call it just taming the arc. So I'm going to try to go back and forth between 2 good swings and 2 bad swings. Now here's the funny thing. Not that I have the perfect kettlebell swings at all, but I have a really hard time in doing this poorly. So my bad ones are like wildly exaggerated. So just bear with that, okay? So 2 good, 2 bad, back and forth. So again, the arc is the pass of the bell. Bad ones, huge arc. Good ones, tight arc. So hopefully I made that abundantly obvious, and that's not what they normally would look like, not so exaggerated. But they're out there, that's the thing. So there's a target, right, for where the handle of the kettlebell is supposed to pass through. Just make sure this is obvious. Sorry, catch my breath. All right, so if we were to draw a triangle, knee to knee, and up through my midline, that's where we want the handle of the kettlebell to pass through. If my arc is big, and I do one of these, my handle is going to be below my knees. If I close the gap, my handle is right in that triangle. So now I'll face this way so it's more obvious. Here's bad, below my knees. Here's good, way above my knees. So just in terms of like, where do we want the bell to go? Again, we're talking handle, not the actual body of the bell, if that makes sense. So with that said, let's just do a set of 10. If you need to shut it down, that's okay.
I think that might be the corrective that makes sense.
That works for you? Okay. So let's shoot for a set of 10 and focus on where the path of the handle is. And more importantly, is, quote, being patient with your hips, not prematurely hip hinging. So if you 2 are good, set of 5, hey, you know what, let's go set of 10 if that's okay. All right, so I want to watch this so I can keep you 2 apart, okay?
I'm gonna go up so you can stagger too.
Yep, let's go on 3 if we could here. So let's say 1, 2, 3, and go.
Are we trying to do that?
No, you're good, you're good. And once your 10, shut it down. All right, Paul, unfortunately, is the biggest winner in the room. Yeah. So, and it might just be because of that. Now,
Because I really feel it in my lower back.
yeah, okay. So I think it's time for you to shut down the swing to that. So the bottom line there for Paul, and hopefully it was obvious in the video. Now, if you're at home and you have the luxury of stopping and rewinding, like now would be a good time to rewind and look at Paul's order of operations on the down. It was hips first and belt second. There was no gap there, really. So again, this is like the hardest thing to fix. So one thing that we can all do together is just simply like patterning, not under load, but we just go through the process together. So that should be okay for you to do right now. So let's do this together right now. So I'll go right here, and this won't be like anything like that'll be rocket science. I'm going to cue either hips or arms, okay? Because really, those are the two things we're thinking about. Let's all start off at the bottom of our swing. We're going to go through 8 reps of this. So we unlock the knees, right? We hinge our butt back. We don't lose our posture and our belly behind. So step 1, just get tall by driving your hips forward. Step 2, arms to shoulder height. Good. Step 3, close the gap between your arms and your hips. Don't move your hips. Now drive your hips back into your hinge. Cool. So hips, arms, arms, hips. It's hard to see you're breathing right now. That's okay. Hips, arms, arms, hips. Hips, arms, arms, hips. Keep going. Hips, arms, arms, hips. Hips, arms, arms, hips. I think 2 more. Hips, arms, arms, hips. 1 more. You know the deal. All right. So, Joe, now that everyone can see you, you're actually still going a little early with your hips before you finish with your arms. So here's what I'm going to do real quick, Joe. Let me, just so that people can actually see you and believe that you are real, I'm going to quick go to a gallery view. Joe, so why don't you do one purposely poorly, where after your arms are high, you bring your hips back. So you're like, get right here for me.
With the actual bell or just hands?
No, just you standing. Unless you're that strong, you can hold that 35-pound bell up there, man. All right, so purposely, like, start to bring the arms like a tiny bit down. Push your hips back now. That's pretty much what you were doing in a less exaggerated way. So even under like no load that was happening for you. So slow it down a little bit. Let's bring the hands really close to the hips before the hips go anywhere. So lower, lower, lower now. We'll come back up. Yep. Yeah. That looks really good right now, man. So it's interesting, and you can relax there, Joe. If they can't do it well like this, there's no way in hell under stress and under load that they're going to do it well with the kettlebell hands. So this is, in my opinion, like a super valuable drill to work on. Talking about the triangle is also pretty helpful. Now, there's something else that we can do, and it's all about like if the arc is too big, then we just simply physically hit something. So let's set that up right now. Now, Joe, not really possible for you to do. Those of you watching the future, if you're in the studio, you're going to grab a couple of yoga blocks and a med ball, and you can set this up pretty easily. So that's what we're going to do right now. So, Tina, see if there's yoga blocks anywhere around. There should be 2 somewhere, and I want to stack them up if you can find them. Tuesday night. Real fun. Very nice, huh? Okay. Well, we're missing yoga blocks in the studio. That is interesting. All right, so we got to go with plan B. Plan B is going to be a little bit of a wider base than I'd like, honestly. But here we're going to. Oh wait, we got one. All right, we got one. I'll use it. Thank you. So we're going to go a little bit of makeshift here. This is already a makeshift drill for the record. We're going more makeshift. So we got 1 and 2 and 3. Okay, and I think for me, this will be about right. So the way I'm setting this thing up, there needs to be enough room for the kettlebell to pass with good mechanics, but not enough room for the kettlebell to pass with band mechanics. So we talked about the triangle already here, right? So if my handle passes through my triangle, I should have no problem getting the bell back and not hitting this. If I don't do it with good mechanics, right, I can hit that with my hands. So this might be a little tight, but we're gonna try this out right now. So I'm gonna try, and then we'll see if this is right for Tina, and she'll try. Joe, if you can do a makeshift version of this with like books or whatever, go right ahead. But the nice thing about this drill, really simply, is that like, if you hit it, you don't get hurt, right? And all that happens is the medicine ball goes flying. And then you're like, oh shit, that was a big arc and that was a bad arc. That's all it really comes down to. So I'll do, hopefully, 3 good ones and 1 bad one. Now here's the deal. We can't hike the bell anymore in this scenario. And I'm all about hiking the bell and not doing this to create momentum to get people started. We don't have a choice in this scenario. So this is like the outlier as it relates to that setup and starting point. So here I am, I'm gonna create a momentum. Pretty simple. So big arc, that goes flying. Small arc, I'm nice and clean. So Tina, let's see if this will work for you. Now I'm taller than you are, so you might only need that. So stand over top of that really quick. Why don't you face towards the camera just for a sec? Yeah, so like, yeah, and could you actually reach that with your hands pretty easily? Yeah, all right, so this is probably right-ish for Tina. And for the record, Tina doesn't have a bad downswing sequence. It could be better, but it's not bad. But I'm just saying, not perfect, but good. So let's see if she can pull this off. So can you do a full set of 8 without hitting the mid ball? No problem. And done. All right, kid, I want to try something out here. I think that was a little too easy.
Yeah.
So I'm going to raise you up 2 inches. Let's tighten it up. So now her arc has to be even tighter. I don't think that was tight enough, honestly.
All right, how many? 8?
8 would be awesome. Don't break my medicine ball, please. Good, these are tight. Hit it at the end for fun. Yay, it's fun. All right, so I think that was about right.
Yeah.
To me, like, now I failed by not giving the camera a lateral view, but like her sequencing got tight. Her arms were like really close to her hips before she hit. So that's a really, really effective drill. If we're in a place where we got those really big like slam balls that are like fabric on the outside and they have like, it's almost like rope, like shoelace that ties them shut. Sometimes those are big enough by themselves, but you don't have to get like so wildly creative like we did here with a riser and a step and a med ball. But you get the idea. I mean, even if you get like a foam roller, sometimes you're cut into thirds. Sometimes a foam roller is all you need, or a foam roller on a yoga block. And the thing that you're hitting doesn't matter. There shouldn't be any repercussions if you hit the thing. 1, it shouldn't break, and 2, it shouldn't be jarring to the body and hurt the person. That's all. So that's one really good fix that I really like, and I find for more often than not helps. Now, there's another option, and the big question is, can we figure out how to do it? So we can increase the lever arm, meaning we create more distance between the kettlebell and our bodies. Joe, do you have like, not like a towel that you'd like use in the shower, but like something a little bit bigger than a rag that you have access to over there? And you very well might be the guinea pig here, Joseph. Oh, we do. That's perfect, man. All right, you're gonna be the guinea pig. So look, if we lengthen the lever, right? So like we force the arc to become bigger. Joe, what's the flooring that you're at right there?
I'm on a, here, I can lower you down.
You're on carpet?
Yeah, like an area rug. Oh, hang on, sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, can you actually put this like, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna put the computer low. It's weird, the camera on my laptop is under the screen. That's why you can like see the keyboard. It's really weird.
That is a little weird.
You know, I can just put you on the ground completely.
Are you like one of those people that's just like too good for a Mac, Joe?
Yes.
Do you have an Android phone too?
No.
I'm just giving you shit, Joe. All right. So yeah, Joe, you've got your set up there. I don't think we can do this in here. So it's gonna be what you think. You turn the kettlebell 90 degrees like we have. You're gonna pass the towel through it. You're gonna step back. You're gonna hike and swing. Now here's the deal, Joe. If you do that, guess where the kettlebell goes? Yes, sir. So Joe, don't destroy your beautiful, wonderful girlfriend's apartment, man. Don't be that guy. 2 for 5, man. Good for, so you're gonna hold each side individually. I'm sorry, I shouldn't you do that way appropriately. Make sure you got a good firm grip. Are you confident that thing's not gonna break and the kettlebell won't go flying? Because yes. Don't lose your toes, man. There we go. Now we can't see all the details, but the bottom line here is this change of events. If Joe were doing a really early premature hip hinge, this would not be working out right now. And we can also see that Joe's hands are passing through the triangle if you really pay attention. Joe, how about like 2 more? And there it is, man. Great job. So that's called the quote long lever drill. Now that actually has 2 different benefits, and that might be a good one for you too. So the 2 benefits are 1, changing hip hinge mechanics on the way down. But 2, if you have someone that's shrugging this thing up, right? So it's hard enough to shrug the bell up when it's actually attached to your hands. But the second you attach it to like something else that isn't firm, you can't do it anymore. So that person all of a sudden will have no choice but to be forced to truly use their hands. So either of those 2 drills work. They both, for someone who's like new to kettlebells, they're both a little scary, just to be totally honest with you. So they're not really for everybody per se. All right, so you're gonna chill, but why don't we hit, I don't know, how about 15 swings now? Because we can, because it's been so long since we swung our bells. So now your application is going to be trying your best to pass that handle of the bell through the triangle on a consistent basis for all 15 kettlebell swings that we're about to do. All right, well, let's set her up. So bell, take your step back, hinge, angle, posterior chain loaded go. All good, all good. All right. So now we have to live in a pretend world where everyone's downswing sequence is perfect and beautiful. Let's transition again. So grab a sip of water first, at least I know I need to. Good. All right. Last piece of the puzzle. Power and explosiveness. The fun stuff. So the order in which we corrected things is on purpose. If you don't have a good hip hinge, you shouldn't even swing a kettlebell. If you don't have good bracing, like a better sequence or more power kind of don't matter. Teaching power before good sequence doesn't make sense because you're reinforcing bad sequence. So now finally, like this is like stage 5 technically, because at first you're just teaching them how to like, you know, set up and all that stuff. Then it's hinge, then it's brace, then it's sequence, and then it's power. And obviously breathing is in the mix there. So great drill I like to use is just that body weight. It's called chop and pop. And it's everything that you would do in a vertical jump minus leaving the ground. And it's just trying to teach that person to be fast with their hips. So here's the drill. I'm not going to go long arm. You can double jump on this guy. I'm going to keep my elbows bent to about 90 when I'm up here. And this is going to be where I stop at the top. So this represents highest we get in the vertical jump, but also the top of our kettlebell swing. So the quote Chop is me going along my thigh. Didn't do a great job getting there. You can hear it a little bit more obviously there. So now when I get down here, I do straighten out my arms. Then I'm going to come up aggressively right to there, and everything's fired up. So I'm tall and I'm tight. So this is just a drill literally where we're trying to really aggressively fire those hips fast. So let's do this together. We'll go into them. So there's the chop and the pop, and the chop and the pop. The chop obviously is a hip hinge. So let's go on through here. So 1, 2, 3. There it is. All right, you're still in the game. Swing your belt for 10. See if you can be fast with your hips. So I don't know how obvious it was on camera there, but for me at least, I was probably twice as fast as it was earlier in the game. So if you watch how quickly I'm getting a lockout now, that drill truly made a difference for me. So you go 5 into that breath. I mean, I'm way more aggressive. I already know all the things I'm supposed to be doing. So frankly, like that's a great drill just for prep for somebody.
Which
To
is
be
kind of hype them up too.
exactly. All right, as I'm catching my wind here. The next thing we're gonna do, you need a partner for, and this is a lot of fun. It's called kettlebell spiking. So it's what it sounds like. So when swinging a kettlebell, their partner is pushing it down and spiking. So what happens is, if you go back to like plyometrics, stretch shortening cycle, which Joe can tell you all about right now because he's in school for it. The greater the speed of the eccentric, the more potential energy that's created. And if used appropriately and timely, the more kinetic energy is created as a result of that. So Tina, who did you?
Oh, yeah.
Lighter guy. Now, make sure we're on the same page. I am pushing the kettlebell down once you're at the top of your swing. Okay. We'll shoot for 6 where I do the push. Your first 2, I'm not doing anything. Now, quick note. When we were doing the karate chop to make sure someone was tight, we stood on the side of them. 100% where you want to be again here. So I'm going to stand off to the side on this. So Tina, I'll let you do 2, and then I'm going to push you into the bottom. And she's going to have to be real tight. This will change your power and your sequence. 1. Now I'm coming on board here. I'm going to go a little bit more aggressive every time. One more for good measure. Done. So that changed the game dramatically and tremendously the second you start to implement that. So you were tighter, agreed?
Yeah.
You were faster.
Yeah.
And now she's got almost no choice but to have a good sequence. Right. Because the arms are coming down so fast now, it's kind of hard to prematurely send those hips back. Now, that's an advanced corrective, to be super clear. If someone has a shit swing or they're not strong, I would never consider doing it. So if you're in a scenario here where you have a partner, pause, do a set of 8 each way. I'm gonna let you do it on me right now. Joe, sorry you're riding solo again, man.
Are you like, can this be something to like perfect a swing then?
100%.
Would that be? Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that's
this is
where-
more towards like the back. And so for the power thing, I'd rather see like chop and pop
Right.
and things along those lines in the beginning. But once you've done all the things you can do and you like your swing already,
Yeah.
it's just like, oh, just get that little extra pop. Or you just want to be mean,
Yeah.
and make shit really
So
hard.
it's harder, yeah.
No, let's do it.
Do you want to have your bell?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then Paul will give you a chance to push too. Okay?
And the push is,
Yeah.
but the first time you do it, you're kind of feeling where,
I
how
was
hard you
more
can.
aggressive,
yeah.
more aggressive gradually. I didn't, but it was the first time you've ever experienced
Right.
it. So if you want to be mean to me right away, you can.
Okay.
So you do 2.
Yep.
And then we'll go 6.
Okay. Oh, that's fun.
All right.
Amazing.
Can Paul push you one? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. All right, last round here. So 2 without it, and then.
How do I know how?
You'll feel,
Yeah. Don't be like super light because it will play.
here we go.
Harder.
Harder. Harder. That's good.
Breathe. Good job. Yeah.
It's amazing how hard, right? Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So there it is. Look, that was 1 hour and 15 minutes. By no stretch of the imagination is this going to make you a master at teaching, coaching, and fixing kettlebell swings. That's not it. But this at least like lays out the process, order of operations for you. Like 1, the very beginning, and then what to look for, and then how to fix it. So again, these aren't exercises that we just throw in for fun. Not about that. These exercises all have, these correctives, I should say, rather, all have a particular purpose. It's to improve movement quality in the kettlebell swing. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Now, don't get me wrong. High tension plank is good for a lot of shit. Hip hinge is good for a lot of shit. Like we're talking right now in the context of the kettlebell swing, you're doing these to make that swing look better and better and better. Because if you look at like bang for your buck with exercises, now we're talking strength, deadlifts will win. Okay, no doubt. If we're talking purely conditioning, maybe you can argue that the jump rope is like pretty high on the list because it's like low risk but high reward with conditioning. Kettlebells though, like really find this like fine line where you're getting stronger as you're getting better conditioned with the swing, and there aren't a whole lot of scenarios.
There's a lot of components to it.
100%. And it's advanced.
It's mine, yeah.
This is an advanced exercise. So someone walks through the door day 1, you are not touching this unless they're coming to you from a kettlebell gym. Or like, oh, I trained with kettlebells for 10 years. Even
But
then,
even that,
don't trust that shit. Don't believe that they're going to be good because their trainer might have been garbage. I'm not saying all trainers are garbage, but their other trainer, their standard for what they're supposed to look like might be different than ours. Also, they might be coming from a CrossFit gym. And I'm not saying CrossFit is horrible or bad or ugly or whatever, going to hurt you. I don't like the American style kettlebell swing at all. It's a squat. It's not a hinge. The Russian style or the hard style is the hinge, and that's what we're doing in these facilities, and that's the only version of the kettlebell swing I want to see us. So, what's that?
Russian might not be good.
Russian in general, right now, not great, but Russian kettlebell swing is
Just for
phenomenal.
future, if anybody's watching.
Yeah.
Future.
Yeah, this is right now where Russia's invading Ukraine for the record. So that's it. That's our done.
So when I have
Question?
one more question, I do have a question. So you said it's corrective, but can it also be looked at as refinement? So you have
Oh, yeah.
somebody that's good with their kettlebell and you know you want to take them to the next level because you're like, I can, and I can make this harder. You can add in
100%.
that, or even just add in for me, this was
That was
for
helpful for
speed,
you.
right?
Very
So,
helpful for you.
okay.
So yeah, totally. Refinement, corrected, either way.
Okay.
Paul, any questions?
No, I can feel what I need to work on. Like I know that the hinge is bad under load, but
Yeah.
it's one of those things that it's tough for me to determine what that's from.
Yep.
If it's weak musculature in the lower back or whatever
Yeah,
it is.
or if it's like hardware, it's fine. You know?
The spine should be fully healed. I know that just like that's my weakest set of muscles for sure.
Yeah,
It's
so
my
there's a
lower back.
chance, I mean, in the best case scenario, it's just your motor controls. I know that sounds weird, that like you're
Yeah.
using your body wrong, but that's so easily fixable that hopefully is your.
Because his quads are on and his abs are on, but his glutes fire like.
Yeah,
some of the time.
Yeah.
I can't hinge without rounding my spine.
Yeah.
Is my biggest problem. I really have to focus mentally to be able to hinge at all without rounding my
Where's
spine.
your goal?
Yeah, and we talked about earlier, I talked about earlier, because again, this is a lecture style, where like if you don't fire your glutes, the SI area and the lower lumbar spine, eventually it's gonna become problematic. you're not firing your glutes, that's what you got. So you're proving my point, unfortunately. So it's a teaching point, which is good, but not for you. Joe, you have any questions?
No. A lot of this was review. There are a couple new things. Like I hadn't really seen the high tension plank before as helping this, but it makes sense.
Okay.
But yeah, with the bridging, I hadn't seen you actually, the resisted bridge. I hadn't seen you actually do it with their hands. I'd only seen it with like a big band before. That's the same deal, right?
So let's say you're by yourself. That's a great point. I can hook up one of those closed loop bands that you can use for like assisted like pull-ups, or I mean, frankly, a regular band, like whatever, right? To like something that's fixed, like over here in some way, and then you can stay loaded there with the band and still do it if you're by yourself and don't have a partner. But yeah, it's the same difference, Joe. Like bottom line is like something's trying to push you up. I know we're laying on our back, right? But like that'll also help you kind of stop the bell in the right spot and not let that bell get too high. So it does that, it turns your abs on, turns your glutes on. So, but band or manual, it's the same thing. Any other questions on your end, Joe?
No.
Okay. So the last note, if you're actually still watching this, which maybe you weren't anymore, and that's okay. The kettlebell swing, while it's complicated, the interesting thing is though, this is the foundation for other explosive kettlebell movements. So this is the foundation you need for a one-arm kettlebell swing. This is the foundation you need for a double-arm, dual-bell kettlebell swing, for the kettlebell clean, and for the snatch. So if this isn't good, you don't really have much business doing the other stuff. And, I like flowing, I like mace flow, but I also like kettlebell flow a lot too. Don't touch that stuff until they're really skilled here. And then just because you saw a cool kettlebell flow online does not mean you should be doing that shit with your client until they master the two-handed swing, they master the one-handed swing, and they master the clean. Like those three elements are essential if you're doing any sort of flow, because that clean gets you from a low position to a high position. The one-arm swing also gives you the opportunity to switch sides. So just because, again, it looks cool, like don't go down that road because they're going to probably do it wrong and not get a lot of benefit out of it. And also you run the risk of hurt. The bottom line is like, this is just step one in all the kettlebell movements that are explosive and ballistic that are progressions from here. All right, that's our day. Thank you for watching.